Hey everyone. Sorry, that took me a second. My apologies. Just going to wait a second for people to come in. Announcing first again, this is a live broadcast. If you're catching it after the fact, make sure that you know that. Hey guys. Hi in the chat. Hello. Wanted to talk to you guys about a bunch of stuff that just came out. And it has been a very, very busy news day. I have been following the Barr hearings. This is the deal. There's a lot of stuff coming out right now and it's happening very quickly. So I am going to do my best to kind of summarize some things for you and then go over some details. So last night we got this article from Jeff at The Market's Work. He again got his hands on the transcripts of the testimony with Bruce Orr. And I started going through and doing a timeline with all the dates and stuff on here. And if you guys recall, I did a timeline way back, which is several lines long and is hard to read if you guys are looking at this on the screen. But I did a timeline. So I just basically took like every fact I knew about Spygate at the time and put it into this timeline. And then threw it out there for folks on Google Drive. And so I decided I would start putting the stuff that we're getting from Jeff into this timeline. So that's what I was working on. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to stop real quick and listen to some of this Barr hearing. And then I'm like, okay, hold on a second. Let me go back to this. Let me go back to this article because there are a lot of blockbuster things inside of this Markets Work article. Not only is what Jeff's doing here so ridiculously helpful for independent journalism as a whole, but he's a damn good reporter. So he went through this testimony and basically blew the lid off of the Spygate story. What it appears is that Joe Pientka, who was the other he was the other FBI agent that interviewed General Flynn with Peter Strzok. He was the handler for Bruce Orr. So in other words, Christopher Steele is fired, but from the FBI. And Christopher Steele is then still working to deliver information into the FBI through Bruce Orr. So Bruce Orr goes and meets with Christopher Steele several times. 12 of those times are documented in 302s. The rest of those times are not documented in 302s, but Pientka is his handler, Bruce Orr's handler. So Steele brings information to Bruce Orr. Bruce Orr filters the information to Steele brings information to Orr transfers the information to Pientka, and then Pientka gives the information to Strzok, which apparently was happening behind, like Orr wasn't aware of that. Okay. So as I'm looking through all of this, understanding that the timeline that we were given by the New York Times back in the day, that Crossfire Hurricane was started on July 31st because of Papadopoulos, and knowing that that stuff is really ridiculous now at this point, knowing that Nellie Orr and Bruce Orr testifies in Congress, or meets with Christopher Steele on July 30th, and then they run back and tell McCabe and Strzok and Page the next day, and then they start Crossfire Hurricane and fly over to meet with Downer. It's very complicated. There is a lot in here. So I was working on a piece to break this down for everybody. And as I'm doing this, we just got the leak of the Page testimony last week. We have this one. I'm doing this stuff. I get notified that former General Counsel James Baker is the subject of a criminal leak investigation. And Jim Jordan wrote to a U.S. attorney in Connecticut basically saying, we just learned that you, and just note the dates here, okay? In October, I believe it was. When did he get interviewed? October 18th. Okay. On October 18th, 2018, just pay attention to the dates. On October 18th, 2018, was when Baker sat down and interviewed with the House Committees on Judiciary and Oversight and Government Reform, okay? This letter that I'm about to read to you came out today. Now understand the timing here. If he wanted to know more information and there was like, because I originally was like, if he's leaking this, it's going to jeopardize the ongoing investigation. Why did he wait until today to send the letter? So I'm starting to think to myself, maybe, and I'm thinking conscious stream here, just kind of flowing out what I'm thinking without just raw, so to speak. What I'm thinking here is that this investigation, they know exactly where they're at with this investigation now, and this all is done already, okay? So he says this, "Dear Mr. Durham, who is the U.S. attorney, and just wait until I show you who this man is. Your heads are going to explode, okay? In October of 2017, the House Committees on Judiciary and Oversight and Government Reform began investigating decision-making and actions at the Department of Justice and the FBI in the context of the 2016 presidential election. The conduct of DOJ personnel, largely at the FBI during this time, departed from the norms of impartial justice, and fairness that Americans expect from these institutions. As we uncovered more facts during our oversight, we began concerned investigative and prosecutorial decisions may have been influenced by bias politically. We know the DOJ and FBI departed from traditional investigative and prosecutorial practices and insufficiently adhered to the FISA. I wanted to see what happens when I try to abbreviate. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. The committees learned that in some instances, high-ranking DOJ and FBI officials, including the FBI General Counsel James Baker and DOJ Associate Deputy Attorney General Bruce Orr, took the self-described unusual step of inserting themselves into the evidentiary chain of custody. Now, I'm going to stop right there for a second and show you something. This is Jordan writing the letter. I just want to show you something. Here we go. This is back in the article that Jeff released just yesterday. This portion right here details the chain of custody and the questions that Bruce Orr is getting about the chain of custody. So can I assume maybe these questions are being asked by Jordan? Maybe. But all I know is this excerpt was chosen by Jeff to be a standout in this article. And I've been out of it for about 8 years. Couldn't be Jordan. So if you help me if I'm wrong. But a stick or a thumb drive would be physical evidence for which a chain would exist if it were ever needed in court. And you made yourself a part of the chain. Yes, says Orr. Can you think of other instances in your career since 1991 where you made yourself the part of a chain of custody? So this whole segment and then 4 other times inside of this article, basically, we're referencing back chain of custody. Okay, I just want to let you know. So anyway, chain of custody seems to be a problem here, right? During the course of our investigation, we interviewed former FBI General Counsel James Baker and discovered your office is investigating him for unauthorized disclosures to the media. That means that there is right now a criminal leak investigation going on from the office of United States Attorney John Durham. I just want you guys to understand. During the section of testimony that is shared inside of this letter that came from the House Oversight Committee, they're talking about basically dossier information that is being funneled back and forth between Justice Department officials and the press, thinking David Korn, Michael Isikoff, etc. And we don't have the entire transcript here, so we're left to sort of speculate. But at one point, his attorney, meaning Baker's attorney, steps forward and says, "I'm sorry, you guys can't answer, he can't answer this. He's been the subject of a leak investigation, which is still going on and active at the Justice Department." So that means right now, there is an ongoing criminal leak investigation. And again, I'm going to point back to this. January 15th, 2019. The testimony was back in October. Jordan puts this letter out today. We got Page's testimony on Friday. We got Baker's testimony yesterday. and I'm sorry, Orr's testimony yesterday. Seems like Baker's testimony will be next, then likely the FISA report, then after that, the declassification. That's my assessment of what's coming. I also want to remind everybody that at the same time as all of this is going on, and I haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet, believe it or not, but at the same time as all this is going on, about 4 months ago, the Washington Post leaked that Andrew McCabe has been a part of an ongoing criminal grand jury, and that's been going on for some time, and it's ramping up, and it's serious. So I wanted to mention again for people that are watching, you do not get typically, you do not get leaks out of investigations that are going. In other words, the people, the good guys that are doing these investigations that everybody says are not happening, okay? Everybody says there's nothing happening. Nobody's doing anything. Huber's not doing anything. Nobody's getting anything accomplished. There's nothing no one's ever going to jail. There are things going on. You're not hearing about them on purpose because they're ongoing investigations and you're not supposed to hear about them. If you hear about them, that's a bad thing, which is one of the reasons why I was sort of happy that Huber didn't go and testify in front of that committee, because if he starts talking about investigations, that means either they're over and nothing happened with them, or they're meaningless and useless. Now, I was again immediately concerned that Jim Jordan released this letter talking about this Durham case beforehand, or when it's not finished, if it's not finished, and we don't know that yet. What we do know, once I looked at the date of the Baker testimony and then looked at the date again of this letter, what we do know is that the New York Times released a piece which basically impugned the FBI the other day to such a level that it's mind-blowing. And we know that they're trying desperately and frantically waving their arms around to get in front of something big that's coming down the pike. And if you kind of pay attention to all the breadcrumbs that are floating out there for you, you will see that is in fact what's happening. Something is getting ready to drop. Whatever that is, I'm not sure. But I can understand completely that McCabe is under grand jury investigation criminally, because he was he leaked like a sieve, and not only that, he's been central to all of this malfeasance at the FBI. He's the one who said first we F Trump or Flynn, and then we F Trump. I mean, look. He's under grand jury investigation for at least a year now, it appears. And it looks like Baker is another serial leaker, is kind of sitting out there next to him. Now, I just said, who is this John Durham, right? I couldn't believe this. And, listen, I know it's Wikipedia. Okay. Here's John Durham. John Henry Durham is a United States attorney for the District of Connecticut. He's best known for leading an inquiry. Listen. He's best known for leading an inquiry into allegations that FBI agents and Boston police had ties with the mob. Now, I'm just going to stop for a second. In the audience, call out the first thing you think of when you read this. Huber, whatever. I don't care. Reading my comments. Listen, I know that you guys have your little pet peeves about how I pronounce things, and I really do try my best. I really do. And I'm just, when I'm in mode like this and I'm zoned in, it's hard to control my excitement. Huber, whatever. Listen, guys. John Henry Durham is the United States Attorney for the District of Connecticut, is best known for leading an inquiry into allegations that FBI agents and Boston police had ties with the mob, and his appointment as a special prosecutor regarding the 2005 CIA interrogation tapes destruction. On November 1st, 2017, he was nominated by President Trump to be Connecticut's next U.S. attorney. On February 15th, 2018, his nomination to be U.S. attorney was confirmed. He was sworn in on February 22nd, 2018. Durham graduated with honors, blah, 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 blah. He was a volunteer on an Indian reservation. That's wonderful. Amid allegations that FBI informants, listen, James Whitey Bulger and Stephen the Rifleman Flemmy had corrupted their handlers, U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno named Durham special prosecutor in 1999. He oversaw a task force of FBI agents brought in from other offices to investigate the Boston's office's handling of informants. I should have shared this on Twitter. Stupid. In December 2000, Durham revealed secret FBI documents that convinced a judge to vacate the 1968 murder convictions of Enrico Tamaleo, Joseph Salvati, Peter J. Limone, and Louis Greco because they had been framed by the agency. In 2007, the documents helped Salvati, Limone, and the families of two other men who had died in prison win a $101.7 million civil judgment against the government. In 2002, Durham helped secure the conviction of retired FBI agent John Connolly Jr., who was sentenced to 10 years in prison on federal racketeering charges for protecting Bulger and Flemmy from prosecution and warning Bulger to flee just before the gangsters' 1995 indictment. Durham's task force also gathered evidence against retired FBI agent Paul Rico, who was indicted in Oklahoma on state charges he helped Berger and Flemmy kill a Tulsa businessman in 1981. Rico died in 2004 before the case went to trial. He also led a series of high-profile prosecutions in Connecticut against the New England mafia and corrupt politicians, including former Governor John G. Rowland. Seems like he's very, very, very suited to do this sort of an investigation. In 2008, John Durham was appointed by then Attorney General Michael Mukasey to investigate the destruction of CIA videotapes of detainee interrogations. On December 8, 2010, Durham closed the investigation without recommending any criminal charges be filed. His final report remained secret, but was the subject of an unsuccessful lawsuit under FOIA filed by the New York Times reporter Charlie Savage. Whitey Bulger met a violent end after a lifetime of brutality. Whitey Bulger just died. He was killed in prison after he'd just been transferred. Now listen, could this be a just random coincidence? Sure, absolutely. Could be. Find it interesting that Bulger gets killed while this gentleman is doing a leak investigation? I don't know. Just weird, right? Very weird. I'm just not saying anything because I'm trying to process all this. It's just sometimes you hear stuff and you just got to get it out of you. And this was one of those times. So we have a U.S. attorney that we'd never heard had been working on anything before, a U.S. attorney outside of Hoover who is prosecuting some things. We'd never heard that publicly before today. The testimony of Baker happened back in October, and they just put this letter out today. They've been sitting on that for months. November, December, January, about a month, 3 months. Thanks for the super chat, Dennis. That's really kind of you. So I'm just saying that it's very interesting how all of this stuff is trickling out now, and keep your eyes at the Epoch Times to watch what Jeff's coming out with next. And I really recommend that you guys read this article. It's very, very long, and it couples nicely with the Lisa Page article from last week. Now, there's a lot more, in my opinion, in terms of juice in this one. I'm just saying that there's something definitely percolating. And I also did a little bit of a thread. Should have done that already. Silly me. I also did another little bit of a thread on Barr yesterday. Which was interesting because he did talk about Key Tam today, and that was in my thread. But a reminder of how the New York Times and other outlets are used as propaganda arms for the rogue intelligence community. The New York Times printed a story on 5/16/18 proclaiming that Crossfire Hurricane started on 7/31/16 and was a counterintelligence investigation into George Papadopoulos. Within hours of opening an investigation into Trump's campaign ties to Russia in the summer of 2016, the FBI dispatched a pair of agents to London on a mission so secretive that all but a handful of officials were kept in the dark. Their assignment, which has not been previously reported, was to meet the Australian ambassador, who had evidence that one of Donald J. Trump's advisors knew in advance about Russian election meddling. Now, this was the article they wrote back then to get out in front of something else. The agents summarized their highly unusual interview and sent word to Washington on August 2nd, 2016, 2 days after the investigation was opened. I would argue that they opened the investigation on August 2nd because that's when they met with Bruce Orr. And I would also argue that Papadopoulos was a cover for why they went out to talk to Downer. And I would also argue that MI6 and Dear Love are ridiculously complicit in this entire thing. And that's probably about to come out too. And I don't know how Brexit's tied into it, but everything's tied into everything. So I don't know. That's what I got. That's what I got. So, I mean, it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. We've got till Friday. Usually Friday's the bombshell day. I don't see this slowing down. And in terms of Barr, let me just show you something. Stand by. Don't mind me. Okay. I started and I got pretty far. I did a lot of work here on Barr and I really had every intention of doing this video, but things keep happening and I don't have any time. I run out of time. I can't research one thing before the next thing comes up. And so I'm kind of struggling here to keep in front of everything here. But he's just blah. Like I did a lot on his testimony that he did in oral history, and I was listening to his stuff before, and I'm blah on him, and I still the Terwilliger thing I put out for you guys, and I still have all of that to research, and there's even more. I have all of these to read. See, I give myself little notes, links to be read. So I just I can't give you guys a yay or nay. You know, he was responsible for some of the pardons or recommending some of the pardons. Take from that what you will, you know. I'm not thrilled, but I'm not, he's very, very, it seems as though President Trump picked him for a couple different reasons. He's very, very big on giving the executive lots of power to, do things. He's also very, very big on enforcing the border or securing the border. His testimony so far is just okay. I mean, he said that Comey was great, but he's in a political hearing. He's got to walk a tightrope. I don't know. I'm tired of the games. I just wish we knew if somebody was a good guy or a bad guy, and sometimes it just takes time. And there's a lot of deep state references to him. He's friends with Mueller, blah, 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 blah. I know. I'm not, when Whitaker came out and he was appointed AG, I kind of did a happy dance and threw a party and showed you guys why I can't do that this time. And Terwilliger, yes, everybody last night started talking to me about Terwilliger and the fact that he was on Fox News to talk about immigration right after I just, kind of re-brought him to the forefront. And I thought that was interesting. I don't know why. I guess it's a coincidence, right? So this U.S. attorney who's doing this investigation into criminal leaks and who knows what else, outside of Huber, is responsible for basically sending FBI agents to jail because they got corrupted in the whole Boston mob thing and Whitey Bulger. The connections are just astounding. And that's all I got for you. That's all I got. Does anyone have any questions? I'll wait a second. Thank you guys for being here, by the way. 24 minutes flies by like it's nothing. Mm-hmm. Great job. Great job. Oh, yeah. I also want to share something else. I shared on my podcast, which is Fridays at 5 p.m. with Frank from Quite Frankly. It's called the Dark to Light podcast, in case you guys don't know. Dave Janda, Dr. Dave Janda, who worked in Washington and has a lot of contacts, came out and said on an interview, and I don't have any way to corroborate this or tell you it's true or it's not true. This is just, somebody's reporting something that their sources told him, and he believes his sources. And I love Dr. Janda. I've been on with him several times. He's a great guy. So I'm just going to tell you what he said, and then you guys can decide for yourselves what you think. He said that Barr was nominated right after the Bush funeral because George Bush Jr. flipped and gave Trump all kinds of information. And the Barr appointment was in exchange for that, so that Barr would keep the Bush name out of the four. And that's that. So there's some kind of a deal being made there. That's what Dave Janda's people told him. And I'm just relaying that. And that's it. Oh, the Ukraine. Oh gosh, the Ukraine. Yes. Yes. So the other thing that I'm looking into here is that, okay, let's just go. I'm sorry about the unorganized manner in which this is happening, but so we had Chalupa, who was working for the DNC, basically trying to do anything and everything that she could to take down Manafort, digging into all kinds of dirt about him, working for the opposition forces, like the people that were on the other side of the Ukraine issue opposite Manafort, right? So Manafort is kind of holding up the, how do I say, status quo, and then there's all these other forces on the other side that are wanting Manafort to get out of politics in the Ukraine and blah blah blah. And she's working on, during the election, on trying to get that out to the public and do reporting on it. And it comes into the Steele dossier in certain portions. And interestingly enough, they mention in this, or mentions that inside of this article, and in the transcript, he says that the first meeting he had with Steele, the attorney for Deripaska was talking to Steele and basically saying that there was some kind of a conflict between Deripaska and Manafort, and that, Manafort was doing something nefarious with money, and Deripaska was upset with him. And basically, later on, I started thinking about the John Solomon article that came out, which discussed Deripaska's role in the Levinson incident, which I detailed back in the day, but also discussed how in September of 2016, 3 FBI agents who had worked with Deripaska on the Levinson case went to Deripaska while he was in New York on a UN trip and started badgering him about the fact that Russia was colluding with Trump to influence the election. And Deripaska basically said, "This is complete rubbish. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't even believe that you're making something out of nothing like this. I don't even like Manafort, and it doesn't matter. That's bull." And the person who gave this information to Solomon is Waldman. Now, if we want to tie Waldman back in again, we can remember that Solomon and the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence released signal messages between Waldman and Warner on the Senate Intelligence Committee, as well as Dan Jones, that looped in Christopher Steele, Oleg Deripaska, and Julian Assange. Does it ever get any easier to keep track of this nonsense? I'm just saying, this is all interconnected. Anyway, I'm going to end now. Otherwise, I'll sit here talking to you guys all day, and you don't want to hear it. So if you guys appreciate the work I do, and thank you for the super chats, guys, they're so appreciated. I'll keep working on this. Trust me. Trust me. This is not the end. I'm going to be I'm going to be working on this intensely, probably until late in the evening. If you guys appreciate the work I do and you'd like to become a patron, I would be honored to have you. You can find me on patreon.com/TracyBeans with a Z. You can also find me on Subscribestar, which is now notified me that they are accepting payments. And so if you guys want to voluntarily support my work every month to keep me doing this full time, I would be honored to have you over on Subscribestar. Now, if you don't like Patreon, my PayPal address is also in the description box below. And I had a little bit of a debate with people today on my Twitter thread, not many, just a few. My information is always free to you to consume. I will likely have a sponsor or two or somebody who helps support me that wants to advertise a MAGA friendly or, right side of history friendly product to you because they value your business. That may happen. But if you choose not to contribute to me, you'll still be able to consume my information and it'll all be available for you guys. I never hold anything back from you. However, I am infinitely blessed that there are a number of patriots out there who have stepped up to support me monthly so I can do this as my job. And I can't express my thanks enough. So to everybody out there, have a fantastic day. Fantastic day. Keep your eyes peeled. Things are coming hot and heavy now. And we will talk to you very, very soon.